He takes up his phone. He types the message. He reads it once. He deletes it. He types it again, slightly different, little more casual, slightly less like what it truly is, which is a guy holding his breath, praying a screen would light up and make him feel complete again. He sends it. He places the phone face down on the table, and then he stares at the ceiling. You know this sensation. Maybe not this particular space, this exact message, this exact woman, but you know the quality of that quiet, the precise weight of waiting for someone to prove that you still matter, that the connection you felt was true, that the energy you placed into this device wasn't just heat fleeing into a room that was never going to warm. 3 hours pass. No reply. He picks the phone up again. And now is the moment. This particular instant, the second pickup, the reaching again, is where everything either continues or changes. Most males reach. They type, "Just checking if you saw this." They send a meme to break the tension. They find any reason to re-enter a place that has softly, but obviously, ceased opening for them. But what if he didn't? What if, instead, he puts the phone down, not in anger, not as a ploy, not because he read some article on playing hard to get, but because some softer, more weary, more honest part of him just says, "Not anymore." What occurs in the next 72 hours is something most guys never get to witness. Not about her, about themselves.
Let's start with the science, since this topic needs more than advice from someone's elder brother. In 1966, social scientist Jack Brem created a notion called psychological reactance. The hypothesis is brilliant and cruel in equal measure. When human beings believe that a freedom they previously enjoyed is being threatened or withdrawn, they experience a motivating condition, reactance, that pushes them to reassert and reclaim that freedom. In basic language, we want what we believe we could be losing. We desire more of what we perceive is becoming unavailable. This is not manipulation. This is not a trick. This is one of the most widely established behavioral patterns in human psychology, examined across consumer decisions, political opinions, parental dynamics, and yes, personal relationships. When a guy withdraws his pursuit, legitimately, not as a performance, he eliminates something that the other person had grown to take for granted. And nature, both physical and psychic, abhors a vacuum. Here's what the study on intermittent reinforcement and reactance tells us about attraction dynamics. The regular, predictable presence of someone's attention tends to diminish its perceived worth over time. Not because individuals are cold or calculating, because the human brain habituates. What is constantly available becomes background noise. What becomes ambiguous becomes signal. This is not pleasant to hear. It runs opposite to everything we're told about stability and commitment being appealing. And those things are beautiful, but only when they come from a person who is also mentally separate, self-directed, and capable of functioning without you. Consistent pursuit from a man who needs the chase to continue in order to feel okay is not loyalty. It is reliance made evident. And reliance, however lovingly wrapped, radiates a frequency that the neural system of the other person detects as load, not safety. But when a guy pauses, sincerely, totally, without intention, the psychology transforms in ways that are intriguing and frequently unexpected. Her mental narrative, which had been silently functioning on the idea that he would always be there, always reach out again, always close the distance, suddenly had nothing to press against. And what happens when you remove the wall someone has been leaning on without knowing they were leaning. They notice the wall.
There is something that happens in the silence after a man stops chasing that nobody talks about because it's uncomfortable for everyone involved. Her feelings, the real ones, not the ones filtered through the comfort of knowing he will always reach first, begin to surface. Here is why. When your pursuit is consistent, it does something invisible and significant. It allows the other person to exist in a state of managed ambivalence. They don't have to decide how they feel, because the situation is always being held open by your activity. Your texts are a hand on the door. While that hand is there, she never has to choose whether she would open it herself. When you remove the hand, the door becomes a question, and questions demand answers. Some women, in this silence, discover that their feelings were more real than they had allowed themselves to acknowledge. The absence creates space for what was genuinely there to surface, and that surfacing often looks like reaching out, initiating, saying something honest that the comfort of being pursued never required her to say. Other women discover something different, that what they were responding to was the comfort of being wanted, not the particular person doing the wanting. And that discovery, while painful in the short term, is the most honest outcome available. It is information. It is clarity. It is the truth that no amount of pursuit would have ever uncovered, because pursuit, by its nature, keeps the situation too warm for that kind of cold honesty to arrive. The silence doesn't manipulate anyone's feelings. It reveals them. It is the most honest instrument available in early romantic uncertainty, and it works precisely because it asks nothing and performs nothing. It is simply the space in which the truth has room to stand up. Let's talk about what you are communicating when you stop. Not what you intend to communicate, not what you hope she will infer. What you are actually transmitting at the level of behavior and pattern when the messages stop. You are transmitting self-possession. You are demonstrating, not saying, demonstrating that your sense of yourself is not contingent on her response, that you have somewhere to be, that your internal world does not collapse in the absence of external validation, that you can sit with uncertainty without immediately acting to resolve it. These are not small things. These are not tricks. These are the signature behaviors of a man whose nervous system is regulated, whose identity is established, and whose presence is therefore safe to be near. And here is what's crucial to understand. You cannot perform this. You cannot send a message designed to look like you've stopped caring and have it land the way authentic stillness does. Women, and particularly emotionally intelligent women, read behavioral patterns with a precision that most men underestimate. They are not reading your individual messages. They are reading your pattern across time. And a pattern of pursuit, followed by performed withdrawal, is still legible as pursuit. It still smells like need with a new outfit. What is different, what actually changes the dynamic, is when the stillness is real. When you stop, not because you're playing a move, but because you have genuinely redirected your energy toward your own life. When you stop reaching for the phone because you're actually absorbed in something else. When the distance is not manufactured, but recovered. The natural distance of a man who is, simply, living. That silence has a different quality. It does not perform. It does not lean. It does not wait. It exists. And existence, full, genuine, unsupervised existence, is the rarest and most compelling thing one human being can offer another. I want to address this directly because it is the honest objection, and it deserves a real answer. Critics of this framework will call it manipulation. They will argue that deliberately withdrawing attention is a power play, a psychological lever being pulled to engineer a response, that it treats attraction as a game with moves, rather than as a human connection between two people operating in good faith.
And if withdrawal is performed, they are right. If you are sitting on your phone, timing your silence, calculating how long to wait before responding, engineering absence as a tactic, that is manipulation. It is also, importantly, exhausting and ineffective because it requires you to remain focused on her while pretending not to be. You are still orbiting her. You have just changed the direction of the orbit. But that is not what we are talking about. What we're talking about is something fundamentally different. The choice to stop behavior that is not working, is not honest, and is not who you want to be. Continuing to pursue someone who is not reciprocating is not love. It is not loyalty. It is not devotion. It is, at its core, a refusal to accept information that is right in front of you. Because accepting that information requires you to feel something you do not want to feel. Stopping is not manipulation. Stopping is honesty made physical. It is your behavior finally aligning with the reality of the situation. It is the most straightforward thing you can do. When one person is doing all the pursuing and the other is not, the honest response is to stop and see what is actually there. If she returns, you have your answer. If she doesn't, you have a different and equally important answer. Either way, you are no longer suspended in the comfortable fog of not knowing, held aloft by your own effort. You are standing on the ground. And the ground, whatever it turns out to be, is always preferable to the fog. Now let's talk about the part that nobody puts in the thumbnail. Because the most significant thing that happens when you stop chasing her has nothing to do with her. In the first 24 hours, you will feel the withdrawal. And I am using that word clinically because it is clinically appropriate. The neurochemistry of romantic pursuit, the dopamine cycles of sending and waiting, the cortisol spikes of uncertainty, the brief relief of a reply, is genuinely addictive in its mechanism. Stopping produces something that functions like withdrawal, restlessness, an almost physical urge to reach for the phone, a mind that keeps returning to the unresolved situation the way a tongue returns to a loose tooth. This is not weakness. This is biology. This is what months of anxious attachment behavior does to a nervous system that was organized around a specific external stimulus. But here is what happens if you stay with it. Around hour 36, something shifts. The restlessness begins to settle. Not because you've stopped caring, but because your nervous system is beginning, slowly, to reorganize itself around something other than the waiting. You notice things you stopped noticing. The project on your desk that you've been neglecting. The friend you meant to call. The book you're a third of the way through. The run you've been avoiding. The version of yourself that was alive and purposeful before this particular person became the organizing principle of your days. And here is the thing about that version. He didn't disappear. He was just very, very quiet. Because you were very, very loud in your pursuit. By hour 72, many men report something that surprises them. They feel better. Not because they've gotten over her, not because the feelings have disappeared, but because they have reconnected with the part of themselves that exists independently of the outcome. And from that place, from that recovered ground, everything looks different. The dynamic with her looks different. You are no longer in the grip of the outcome. You can see clearly, perhaps for the first time, what is actually there, not what you have been projecting onto the situation in your most invested moments. Your sense of your own value looks different. When you are pursuing, your worth is implicitly located in her response. When you stop, your worth has nowhere to go but back inside, back to its only legitimate address. And your capacity for genuine connection looks different. Because genuine connection, the kind that actually holds, that actually nourishes both people, cannot be built from the posture of pursuit. It can only be built between two people who are each, independently, already standing. Let me tell you 3 patterns that develop in actual relationships when men really divert their attention away from pursuit. I am not providing them as assured outcomes. I am presenting them as established behavioral patterns that suggest something essential about the psychology of attraction. Pattern 1, the reinitiation. When a man who has been constantly pursuing suddenly and fully quits, the most typical initial response in the other person is silence. This stillness might extend anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. During this interval, the other person is recalibrating, adapting to an absence they didn't foresee and hadn't prepared for. What follows, in a considerable majority of situations, is an introduction from her side. Not always, not even most of the time, but often enough to form a pattern, and the initiation, when it arrives, has a fundamentally different nature than anything that was happening throughout the chase phase. It comes from her true internal condition, uncluttered by the comfort of knowing he would reach first. Pattern 2, the clarity without contact. In circumstances when she does not seek out, the man who has actually quit chasing and sincerely redirected his energies typically describes a clarity that the pursuit phase never delivered. He can see, from the foundation of his own restored balance, that the relationship was not what he had been feeling it as, that the intensity he felt was caused mostly by the uncertainty and difficulty of the quest itself, not by the quality of what was really between them. This is not a consolation award. This is the most beneficial potential effect of the exercise. Clean sight, undistorted by the clamor of his own yearning. Pattern 3, the changed dynamic. In circumstances where contact restarts, from either side, males who have actually stopped and sincerely redirected report that the dynamic is qualitatively altered. The anxiousness of the chase phase is gone. They interact with more ease, more presence, more real interest, because they are no longer acting for a result. And this transformation in their internal condition causes a similar shift in how they are received. The same guy, interacting from a healed core rather than from anxious pursuit, provides a distinct relationship experience for the other person. Not because he has learned new techniques, because he has returned to himself. So what does this truly look like? Not conceptually, practically. You cease sending the unreturned mails. Not forever, not with coldness, not with a spectacular final pronouncement that is itself a type of pursuit. You just quit the behavior that is not being satisfied. No announcement, no explanation, no, "I guess you're not interested, so I'll leave you alone," which is still a message, still reaching, still hoping for a response. You halt the reaching. You turn toward your own life with the same force and focus that you have been pouring forth. You work. You train. You call the friend you've been ignoring. You return to the creative activity that used to feel vital before someone else's silence became the most important thing in your existence. You sleep earlier. You consume the genuine meal instead of the convenient stuff. You do the thing you stated you'd do, not as performance, not as self-improvement montage, not to become more appealing, though you likely will become more attractive, because a guy honestly immersed in his own life is genuinely more captivating than a man absorbed in her. You do these things because they are the proper things for you, because they are the life you genuinely want to be living, because the version of you that was arranged solely by another person's response was not the version that was going to make you happy, or her feel secure, or the two of you build something substantial. And then you wait. Not for her, but for yourself to settle. And in that settling, you will find out two things with a clarity that no amount of striving could have provided. What she genuinely feels
divorced from the comforting idea of your ongoing availability, and who you genuinely are, free from the performance of the pursuit. Both responses are worth having, even when they are hard, especially then. The detractors will argue halting is a game, that it's chilly, that it's strategic, that a man who actually cared wouldn't be capable of it. I want to turn that argument over and look at its underbelly. A man who cannot stop chasing, who cannot sit with ambiguity, who cannot shift his attention, who requires a certain reaction in order to feel okay, is a man who has made another person accountable for his internal weather. That is not love. That is not caring. That is need dressed up in the language of devotion. And need, however true, is not a basis. It is a weight. The most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for her, is to become a guy who can stand in the uncertainty without seeking to settle it, who can sense the draw of connection without being trapped by the worry of pursuit, who can want her and simultaneously be okay, truly okay, if this specific connection does not become the thing he hoped it would be. That dude is not chilly. That dude is not playing a game. That man is emotionally liberated. And emotional independence, the type that comes not from not caring, but from caring without reliance, is the rarest thing one human being can bring into a relationship. It is the platform on which true intimacy is truly possible. So put the phone down. Not to give her a lesson, not to make her miss you, not because some video advised you to. Put it down because the version of you that is continually looking for external reinforcement of your own value is not the version you want to be. Because the life you have been ignoring in the desire of her attention is the precise life that will make you fascinating. Because what happens when you stop chasing is not simply about whether she comes back. It is about who you find when the pursuit ends, standing in your own life. That man has been waiting. He is more than you recall, and he is, in every aspect that truly matters, just enough.